On September 5th at 3 p.m., it's a Friday, there will be a rededication of the Fort Klamath Museum, which has been reconstructed. The old guardhouse there, which burned down in October of 2001, has been newly reconstructed and refurbished and has been open to the public, but officially on the 140th anniversary of the founding of Fort Klamath, which will be on Friday, September the 5th at 3 p.m. That new structure will be officially rededicated, and we want to welcome you all to the program, as well as invite you to attend that rededication ceremony. I'm pleased to have with me tonight three guests, all of whom were involved with historic Fort Klamath. On my right is Al Schweitzer, our county commissioner, one of three distinguished county commissioners, who serves as liaison officer with the county museums. On my immediate left is Kevin Fields, who is the curator and custodian and official host for visitors at the Fort Klamath Museum. And on my far left is Tom Cooley, who is a media consultant, but also is familiar to audiences at our local theaters, as well as head of the Klamath County Museum Advisory Board. He is president of that board. I'm first going to ask each of my guests to tell the audience a little bit about themselves and their background and how they came to be involved with this important project. And so I'm going to start with you, Tom, over there. I know you quite well, so give our audience a little bit about your background and how you became involved in this.
Well, I've always been interested in history. Civil War specifically has always been a hot point with me that I've gotten involved with. I've been a reenactor. That's a person who studies, gets dressed up like Kevin is here, and actually goes out and you live that lifestyle in that period. And I've been doing that since, 1970 or so. So I've been doing it a long time. I used to hold up trains in Utah. But when I came out here, I got involved with the local Civil War groups. And we found out, of course, that Fort Klamath was established at the height of the Civil War in 1863. And the local group here, Civil War group here, was just forming, the Cascade Civil War Society, which both Kevin and I are founding members of. We have kind of taken the fort site under our wing, and that's kind of like a place we go to do our reenacting on an actual period military fort. Though there's not much left up there, there are some plans and things for the future.
Right. Kevin, you're next. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in the Klamath Basin and how you became involved in all this.
Well, I was born and raised here in Klamath Falls. I'm a native of Oregon and native of Klamath Falls itself. The only time I was gone from here was the 15 years I spent in the military. I did a little research for the Army, and I virtually came back home. I was with the 1st U.S. Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, Texas, and then when I became the on-site host and curator at Fort Klamath, it was news to me that I came back to the 1st Cav. So it was really fun to become that host.
Interesting. And you spend your summers at the site of the old historic Fort Klamath?
I virtually live there.
Do you live there? I guess that's
Yes.
the question. I hope in better conditions than the original volunteers did. But
Yes,
anyway.
I do.
Commissioner Schweitzer, perhaps you can give our audience a little bit of your background in history and how you happen to be involved with this project.
Okay, I've been in Klamath about 37 years, which doesn't make me a native, but getting close. My wife and I have raised our children here, and my involvement when I became a Klamath County Commissioner, I did not do the liaison to museums. I picked that up probably about 4 years into my 6.5 years. My involvement was that we were trying to save the museums, and we are still trying to save the museums. And right in the middle of that, Fort Klamath decided to burn down. At that point, we had a decision to make as to which way to go. We had some insurance money, we had a large volunteer base, and we decided to start out on the journey of recreating the fort to the best of our ability. The first building, which will be dedicated on the 5th, is the recreation of the guardhouse. We've taken some liberties because we have made it a little bit more modern than it was because we want to be able to maintain it. And in the old days when they built them, that wasn't quite where they were at. But I think when people go up there, they're going to see a building that is a recreation, and then the inside of it is just fabulous what's been done on the inside. So I am really looking forward to the dedication, and also this is, in our plans, is just the first step.
Right. In point of fact, the new guardhouse, newly constructed guardhouse, has been open for the summer or some portion of the summer.
Yes, it
When did
has.
it officially become available to visitors?
It became available May 31st.
All right.
We opened it up for the event that we were holding there with the Cascade Civil War Society and the opening of the park. And I told Judith just to keep it open so folks could come in and see the progress of the building, where their donations are going to.
Right. You refer to Judith Hassan, of course,
Right.
who is the director of the Klamath County Museum and who is not here today because
Yeah.
of illness. So.
Right. And I've had a lot of people return from out of the area that have donated $20, $30, $40, and they wanted to see something where their donations were going to. And it's worked out great.
Is there, in fact, a membership of any kind that one can have in Fort Klamath, or is it by voluntary donations?
It's voluntary donations.
Right. Let's go forward a little bit to next Friday, a week from this coming Friday. That's at Friday, September the 5th, which marks the 140th anniversary of the founding of Fort Klamath itself back in 1863. And let's talk a little bit about what people who want to visit the site on that particular day might see if they attend the ceremony at 3 o'clock.
Well, first of all, we're going to have some food vendors there.
Good.
And
Food and drinks for purchase.
Right. The grounds will be open at 10 o'clock in the morning, so folks can come in and go through the building, look the grounds over and everything. We're going to have some reenactors up there. We're going to set up the night before and have a military encampment right there close to the building. This way, they get a feel for what the folks were going through up there back in 1863. We were going to have a cannon, but it's going down to Fortuna, California for an event down there.
Whose cannon is that?
It's part of the Cascade Civil War
I see.
Society. It's an original 1861 ordnance rifle. The other gun that was going to come up from Nevada, they're going to the Fortuna event also. But we're still going to shoot a 21 gun salute for
Good.
the rededication.
Would you tell people how they can find Fort Klamath if they've never been there or they don't know how to get there?
Well, there's two ways you can go. You can go up Highway 97 to the Crater Lake Junction and turn onto Highway 62. Take Highway 62 towards Crater Lake, and you can't miss it. You drive right by the site. If you come in on the west side road off of Highway 140, take it right into the town of Fort Klamath, and then come down Highway 62 to the south, and you'll drive right by it.
Right. About how far is it, drive from Klamath Falls?
It's about a 45-minute drive, and it depends on where you're stopping at and everything. You can go by a lot of places to see, but it's about 45 minutes. From Medford, it's a little bit longer.
So at 3 p.m. on Friday, September 5th, there will be a rededication of the newly reconstructed guardhouse there for people who want to attend and be a part of that ceremony.
Right.
Let's go back in time and talk a little bit about the actual history of Fort Klamath, and let's start with the forming or establishment of the fort on September the 5th, 1863. Curious that it's September, number one, because that does not give much time to get things constructed before winter set. The classic Klamath Basin winter sets in, as the case may be. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. But that was after the Civil War had begun, if I recall my dates correctly, and perhaps is one of the reasons the Cascade Civil War Society has been as involved in Fort Klamath, because it's an actual, as you said a little bit earlier, an actual site where reenactment can take place. Leading into that, you did a recent reenactment there, the Cascade Civil War Society, and I think we have a video of that. So we are at this point going to allow our audience to see and participate in a Cascade Civil War Society reenactment of events surrounding the clash between North and South, and this took place last spring, was it, did you say?
It was last July at Fort Klamath.
At Fort Klamath. So our viewers can get a little bit of an idea about what Fort Klamath looks like and what might have gone on there in 1863 or so.
140 years ago, we traveled slower. knew what we would be doing on Sabbath day.
All things were created by him and for him.
Recreation was our own work. People in the 21st century recreate the 1860s.
Ready? 1, 2.
The Cascade Civil War Society from Klamath Falls includes all ages.
I brought sandals and they didn't have sandals back then, so I have to wear bare feet.
1863, this gathering site was a military fort.
At one point, it was called the most beautiful fort in Western America because there was no stockade. The trees were left up.
Now there's a Confederate camp over there. In the middle, the civilians and merchants. On the other end, the northern camp, which occasionally gets raided by Southerners.
Double quick, they're moving! Gather round!
All part of the weekend activity.
Where are those rebels?
Role-playing in costume, which leads to one of 2 daily battles.
Germany, halt!
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you a Civil War skirmish.
Line up on the bench here! Hold at all costs! Hold!
Compared to motion pictures, it is tame, intended not to glorify, but to illustrate style of warfare in the bloodiest of our nation's conflicts.
Clear front!
I've always loved history. I've just always loved the Civil War era history.
Some of the attraction, a different lifestyle, common to our ancestors. Holly Fields becomes a Southern lady.
It's really hard for me to come back to modern times after having hats tipped to me and escorted everywhere and being treated like a lady.
She may play a Southerner, but her husband is a Northerner.
It is a source of constant shame to me that my husband remained loyal to the Union. I have Southern sympathies.
A weekend of playing make-believe, how it was, always with a sense of humor.
Ready?
Good job, Kentuckians. Good job. Attention, company!
Aim! Fire!
Ray Summers at Large with photographer Carol Thomas, Queen, Fort Klamath, Oregon.
All right, thanks very much. And Tom, tell us who did that video.
That was done by Ron Summers out of Portland. He came down and he videotaped that, and he was impressed. He said there was more things there than he thought. In fact, actually, he got 2 videotapes out of it, the second one being on a medical demonstration, an 1863 field hospital at the time.
Well, I don't mean to digress here for a moment. If someone wanted to join the Cascade Civil War Society, how do they do that?
Well, we meet at the Klamath County Museum meeting room on the 2nd Thursday of each month at 7 o'clock. All you have to do is come down. It's open for anyone and everyone.
Visitors welcome.
Yes.
All right, now I'm going to take you back to that time in 1863 when Fort Klamath was founded. Again, we're in early September of 1863. And it was the purpose of it was, Tom, why don't you address the issue of why Fort Klamath was formed originally?
Well, there's several thoughts on that actually, but when you come right down to it, first off, there was no military presence in this area at all.
This was barely settled, was it not?
At that point, yes, it was very sparsely settled by the white man. The local Indian tribes were here, and it was thought that there was some protection that was needed. And they did do a lot of research, and they were looking at maybe trying to get it over in the Rogue Valley or down here or several other places, but they did end up putting it up at the north end of the Klamath Basin there, where it is located now. One reason they did it is because of the grass that grows up there at the time was abundant, and they needed a lot of grass for their horses. But one of the thinkings was, well, yes, we need it to stop bandits and bad guys from robbing the settlers coming in, and if there was any tribal problems. But a hidden reason was because the South had a lot of sympathy here, up and down the coast actually, and it was felt that a military presence here would help squash any uprising or any insurgents at that point.
It was originally volunteers manned the fort originally. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And at what point in time did it become a federal fort or a government fort and manned by officially by federal troops?
Well, the Oregon Volunteers were there from 63 to 67. July of 1867, the 1st U.S. Cavalry, Company A, came to the fort and formally took command of the fort. That released the Oregon Volunteer Infantry from their duty from the Civil War. And it just became a federal fort from then on, from 67 up until 1890.
And can you describe for our viewers the conditions that a member of the cavalry or the infantry, whoever was there, might go through in a year's time?
Well, in a year's time, the Oregon Volunteers, they were doing a lot. They were patrolling east of us, out past the other side of Lakeview, where Lakeview's at now. They were fighting the Shoshone. They were fighting the Paiute Indians over there. They had several big battles in 1864. One of the more prominent ones that sticks out in my mind was when Company I, 1st Oregon Volunteer Infantry, had been out east fighting the Paiutes. They were out on the trail 20 days, and it was rough on them. They had stopped at Camp Alvord to resupply, and on the way back to Fort Klamath, they got caught in a snowstorm. That 20 days supply of food ended up having to be stretched out to 50 days. And when they got to this Sprague River Narrows, they were totally, completely out of food. And what little they did have, the dogs from the Indian encampments around there came in and raided the camp. And they forced marched back to Fort Klamath, and it was a hard trip. The troopers had it even harder. They patrolled even farther, clear out to Fort C.F. Smith, and down in past the lava beds and all over. And their horses, they wore a lot of horses out doing that.
Well, and they depended on their horses too, and I think I read somewhere they were also required to pay for their horses' feed, as well as to spend a lot of time mucking out stalls and stables and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was a lot of manual labor involved when they weren't working on scouting areas and protecting people and things like that.
Yeah, it wasn't just the patrolling or anything like that. Your first dedication as a trooper to your horse, it was to your horse. If you were out on campaign and you were low on water, the water went to the horse instead of the man. In garrison, that was the first duty. You had to go to the stables, clean the stables, take care of your horse, turn your horse out on the pasture, get him reshod, you name it. It was a lot.
I've always taken it, I thought it was funny, they built the stables before they built the barracks, and the horses actually got better treatment than the troops did.
Well, the funny thing is, the stoves for the barracks never did arrive until late of 1867. The stables had the stoves inside.
Heated.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So the horses stayed warm.
There was abundant grass and hay for the livestock, needless to say. There was abundant timber to build additional structures therewith. Can you tell our audience about the, let's say, kind of development track that Fort Klamath was on in what ultimately ended up with, I think, some 40 structures there by 1885. And we're losing our flag, but we'll see what happens. The flag is dropping and the fort is about to close, I think. But by 1885, there were some 40 structures, I believe, there.
There were a lot more than that.
Can you describe some of those to sort of give a picture of what Fort Klamath might have looked like?
Well, you had two major barracks that were out there, 30 feet wide, 135 feet long, a cavalry barracks and an infantry barracks. The cavalry barracks housed all of the 1st U.S. Cavalry and 3 companies of the 2nd Cavalry. The infantry barracks not only housed the infantry, the 21st and the 12th, and at various times, and the 4th Artillery. They had a post chapel there. They had a theater. The guys there performed their own plays. They did some Shakespearean plays. They even had a hotel. Just various things that a military installation today has. They done a lot.
Well, indeed. But and there were virtually no roads in or out of there. There were just trails, and they were accessible only by horseback or by wagon, I assume.
The worst one, it was only open 3 months of the year, was the Rancheria Trail that went between Mount McLaughlin and 4 Mile Lake over to the Rogue Valley. Then they pushed in a new road. 1864, the Oregon Volunteers put a new road, which is now part of Highway 62, up and over into Union Creek, and then it traversed the valley down through there to Jacksonville.
Are there journals that exist or diaries that exist that tell of, let's say, a typical soldier or an officer's life at the fort during this time?
Yes, there are. I acquired an entire series of letters from Jesse Reeves Huggins, Company I, 1st Oregon Volunteer Infantry, that was stationed here at Fort Klamath from 1865 to 1867, when the Federals finally came in and relieved him. In the long run, he hated the area, and it was a quote, "This area is not fit for man or beast. No civilized white man would ever settle this area." And it's kind of ironic. Jesse Reeves Huggins, when he left, he went to Jacksonville. They threw a party for him there. Then they finally left there and went to Fort Vancouver, where they were mustered out. But Jesse Reeves Huggins returned back to the Klamath Basin, and he worked for the Army cutting hay on the hay reserve there at Fort Klamath. And there's others. There's journals, there's diaries from some of the ladies that were there and everything.
Interesting. Well, let's go forward a little bit because we've got a lot of history to cover between the peak at Fort Klamath, which I understand to be about 1885, and a few years later when essentially it was decommissioned as a fort for a variety of reasons, political as well as others. And then there was the famous snowstorm of 1890 or 91, which apparently set a few records then. And can you speak to that or address that, Tom?
Well, there used to be a tree next to the old museum that burned down. And we'd be out there, and I would use that tree, and I would say the snow that year, accumulative, was close to 40 feet from in some records, which was about the height of that tree, which dwarfed the museum building that it was by. Regretfully, we lost the tree in the fire. It went up as well. Now, that wasn't all at one time, of course. That was over the course of the entire year. But there was only a very small skeleton crew there at the fort. I believe there was just, 6 troopers, 2 sergeants, and...
Company I, Company I, 14th Infantry.
Right. And there was a very small unit, actually, and their charge was to just kind of be caretakers at the fort, because Congress was thinking about reopening it at that point because of Crater Lake. But when word got back to Washington, D.C., that a lot of the buildings had been destroyed because of the snowfall, they said, well, they just threw their hands in the air. They said, close it permanently.
And in point of fact, most of the buildings did collapse during that snowstorm, and then in subsequent years, the lumber from those structures was raided by others, or some actual buildings were taken elsewhere and reestablished. And we have a period of time that goes from essentially the 1890s up until the 1950s, when there was, I understand, a vote in Fort Klamath to consider establishing a museum or a visitor center of some kind on the site of the old Fort Klamath. And then from there, we move forward to the dedication of the old guardhouse, the actual guardhouse, which still existed there, as I understand it, a 30 by 30 foot structure. Can you tell us some of the things that were in that guardhouse that were lost when that was officially dedicated in 1973?
First off, that building was not the original. The original building had been lost by that time. And that building was constructed out of logs, the new museum at that time, which was opened in 1973. But inside the building, there were several cases of various artifacts. There was the famous chair that Captain Jack sat in during the trials from the Modoc War, which was also rumored to have once been been owned by Brigham Young. And there was this beautiful, what's the word I'm talking about? The miniature layout of the fort in there.
Diorama.
The diorama, thank you. Couldn't think of the word. And luckily, I was in there just a month beforehand, and I took photographs of just about everything that was in there. So we had a very recent record, and when the building went down and burned down, we lost a lot of artifacts, not all of them, because the ones that were in the case had been removed for winter storage. But those photographs came in helpful. The diorama alone, from what I understand, was estimated to cost approximately $16,000. And without those photographs, we wouldn't have the money to rebuild the diorama, and there isn't one in the works right now.
There.
It is there now.
It is
Oh,
there.
I'm excited. I want to see this. I can't wait for next week.
Good. Well, let me interrupt, Tom. We have just a few minutes left, and I want to go to the fact that this newly constructed building was built with a combination of proceeds from insurance on the previous structure, and it is a 40 by 40 structure, is it not? And one that meets modern codes and is able to be maintained, and we don't have to worry too much about in terms of heavy winters and things like that. So, and you were primarily responsible for that, were you not, Commissioner Swanson?
Well, I did some of it. It does meet codes, and also has 2 restrooms in it, which the community asked us to do, and we were happy to do it. The diorama is going to be a central part of that building, and it is really spectacular, as is the mural that's on the back wall. And it'll be the first building of what we hope to do of several. And part of our plans are to set up a blacksmith's area, have people come in and do blacksmithing during the summer. And also we plan to build a hay shed, and what we're going to do with it is bring in vintage farm equipment and set in there, because hay was really one of the reasons why that fort ended up where it was at. And then what we hope to do is recreate several more of the buildings. And that's our long-range plan.
Excellent. So, again, any other comments that you want to make before we run out of time?
Well, one thing, the fort was once called the most beautiful fort in America, and it is still one of the most beautiful places in the county. If you go up there, it's a breathtaking area of our own county, and we have a rich heritage and history in our county that people should go out and enjoy and partake in.
Well, thank you, Tom. Kevin?
Yeah, the fort, I've had a lot of people stop in and just fall in love with the area, that they want to move up there in that area, or in the area here.
Tell them about winter?
Oh yeah, I tell them about the winter, but not like 1890.
But there's always that possibility, I understand. Well, I'd like to thank each of you for being my guests on tonight's program, and would like to remind all of our viewers that once again on Friday, September the 5th, at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, there will be a rededication of the reconstructed museum at Fort Klamath. And I might also mention that the artifacts there are not intended to stay there year-round in that museum. They, in fact, belong to the Klamath County Museum and come back into the museum during the winter year. So if one wanted to come to Fort Klamath at some time of the year, can you tell us the general months that it is open? Is it open from Labor Day through, from Memorial Day?
From
or is
Memorial
it open
Day
early?
until Labor Day, or we're going to try to see if we can't stay open a little bit longer.
You'll be there for them, is what you're saying.
You betcha.
Again, Tom, Kevin, Al, thank you very much for being a part of this program, and we hope our viewers will take advantage of the newly reconstructed Fort Klamath Museum. It's an historic spot, one of the most praiseworthy and noteworthy places in our basin. Do plan to attend. Thank you very much for watching.